So welcome to the Tuesday, January 10th Cannabis Subcommittee meeting. I call it to order, and I'll start with the roll call on the left.
June Gagne.
Karla Desjardins.
Mary Ann Chinati.
Okay, there is a quorum and no need to appoint any alternates. So we continue with the business of discussion regarding the cannabis regulations. So at our last meeting, we had requested some additional data points for consideration. And I believe staff has a report on that, as well as copies of hard copy regulations.
I don't have hard copies of the regulations that I found subsequent to my last report because they're quite voluminous.
Understood.
I did make a spreadsheet and it is attached to your report.
All right, so it's been summarized
If
for
members
review.
want hard copies, let me know and I will make them, but I just didn't want to kill trees in advance.
Understood. No, I like the spreadsheet.
Yeah. This is the one you sent out, right?
Yep.
Yep, so all members have it electronically, and she gave the spreadsheet in paper form as well. So are there any points for discussion that members or staff wanted to begin with this evening?
The waiting for inquiries, there's a lot of those. Do you know what type of inquiries they're waiting for?
Well, it's in my inquiry to them. What's the status of cannabis regulations in your town?
So we're waiting on those towns to reply to Marion.
Now, I was looking at some of these for the towns near, in our close vicinity. Like most of them are going for special permit that I can see.
Yeah.
Now I got a big sheet. Alphabetically rated. Okay, just like killing them. Now, there's special permit. What does M mean?
The keys on the last page.
Oh, it is.
Yep, so M is moratorium,
Okay.
which means temporary. Moratorium is just a suspension until they make a decision. The P, prohibited, that means they passed a regulation that completely prohibits activity,
Or an ordinance.
or an ordinance.
Now, when they do that, can it not be changed for a long time? Or is there a time limit on when it can be changed?
On prohibitions?
Yeah.
When you prohibit something, that is what it is until someone proposes a change to that, and that change is adopted.
So with our regulations, if we passed a prohibition, then we could only take it away by doing another text amendment. So we would go through the same public hearing process and all of that to change the regulation.
And can we change it if someone comes to the town and wants to have a business?
No,
Unless they propose a text amendment, no.
because it's as of regulations at application.
Yes.
Right.
But if as opposed to a zoning regulation, there's a prohibition at the representative town meeting board of selectmen level, Planning and Zoning Commission has no authority over that. So if there's a prohibition that's an ordinance and someone wanted to change it, they have to approach the board of selectmen. And then ordinances get voted on.
The reason I'm mentioning this is my reasoning with looking at these is there's no proof of anything yet. We don't have, there hasn't been anything in this state that's any of these towns.
You mean operational?
Yeah, through a period of time of a retail operation or.
Yeah, no, it's all new. The only
Right.
thing that's been in existence is the medical. But
Right,
recreational, it's all new as of today, it's allowed.
Right,
In Connecticut, but other states have a history.
Right, the other states do, but not these towns, so.
Well, it's all new to Connecticut, right?
Correct. Well, and I heard that at the last meeting where, you really want to see it you want to see regulations in action.
Right.
So one of the thoughts that I had was to extend the moratorium, suspend this committee for 6 months. And over that 6-month period, some of these towns will take applications and then they would be possibly in operation for a more thorough data review of the impact on the town by way of traffic, safety, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one idea that I thought about given the comments from the last subcommittee meeting, because obviously it's so new, there is not a sample to look at. Now, conversely, by waiting, that means that operators, developers, etc., would look to the towns that allow it rather than look here.
Right.
So it's just one of those things where you're acknowledging that the moratorium.
And here we are wanting to push it out to basically a year. So as Karla just stated, who's going to be looking at it? Just like retail in this area. Where's all the retail? It's not in Plainfield. Where is it? It's in Lisbon, it's in Carolina, it's in Brooklyn. There you go. It's not here. So my problem is just what you said. It'll be gone. Somebody else will stop it up. That'll be a whole year that Plainfield has been talking about cover.
On the other hand, with something this new, is it better to learn from somebody else's mistakes?
Well, what I'm saying
Just
is,
throwing that out.
I know, what I'm saying is maybe we should learn from our mistakes of retail.
Totally, not totally, but it's different, yeah.
We lost our retail because of our location, not because of the commission or our regulations. Our regulations.
No, I know. I'm not stating regulations at all. Not at
No,
all.
it's just, we lost out on retail because of our geographic location. Lisbon was a better area because it was close proximity to Norwich, and Killingly, it kind of leapfrogged over us because we're close to Lisbon, and Killingly was up high enough that we could draw from Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and we also had Route 101, which is the main route to Providence.
But not discussion for this subcommittee, because I do think the topics are different. But looking at the purpose of this subcommittee, our purpose is to figure out if we do nothing, if we let the moratorium expire and nothing happens, then that means an operator could come in and would just fall under our regular regulations, which are not extensive.
Right.
We can choose to prohibit, so we can say not allowed in our town, and we do have draft regulations with that purpose. We can choose to regulate more specifically. We have draft regulations for that. We could also choose to prohibit the retail but allow the agriculture and production purpose. Or vice versa, we could prohibit the agriculture production but allow the retail. Or, as I said, we could extend the moratorium, watch what happens in other towns, and then base the decision on that data. So my feeling is we have to kind of figure out what direction we want to go. This is some great information that has been collected. So I just want to get a feel of, where the subcommittee's at and what direction you feel like might be best purpose.
I do have a question, what is a certificate of location?
Pardon me?
Some of these have a CL, certificate of location.
Right. That's the way the town had determined that they would be approved. They'd apply for a certificate of location through whatever entity handles those. in
So
that town,
different
whether
than a
it be-
special permit process.
Totally. That's totally different?
Yeah.
Is that similar to what ZBA did with
Yep.
motor vehicle?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Similar process then.
Yep.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Does it require public hearing, a certificate of location?
No.
Okay, so that's, okay.
Is it done through this committee or through CBA?
The statute only addresses certificates of location for a specific commission or board for motor vehicle. It does not address for example, cannabis.
Okay.
So presumably, the commission could do the certificate of location for the cannabis. I will double check though with the legislature to confirm that.
But that would be a lesser requirement than a special permit, because a special permit would require public hearing.
Yeah, well, depending on how the regulation is written.
Okay.
Killingly has a special permit. That's pretty close to us.
The majority of the towns you do this special permit route.
I think we all agree we don't want it to fall to the regular regulations. Would you agree with that assessment of our discussions? Okay. So at minimum, we would not want it to default to our regular regulations. Okay, good. So we're all on the same page on that one.
And our moratorium expires.
Moratorium expires right now, April 1st.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then I wrote it
So if we wanted to extend the moratorium, whether we decide 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever decision is made, that would have to be on the agenda of a regular planning and zoning meeting, and at the very latest, it would have to be on the agenda when? Because it has to go to public hearing, right, the moratorium?
You'd have to set the public hearing next month and hear it in March.
Okay.
So one of the choices is to have a grow operation, right? To allow for a grow operation and not retail.
Well, the draft regulations define all of the different cannabis establishment uses. And the commission can pick and choose. Does it want to allow all of them and regulate them somehow? Do they want to do just the grow operations? Do they want to do just manufacturing and packaging? Do they want to do a combination of some and not others? You know, that's totally up to the commission.
Now, it says on here, outdoor grow operation. I think, did we last meeting, we not get information that it's probably not the way to go, an outdoor grow operation?
Most, they require indoor because of, odors and things like that.
And that would be all under regulations.
Yeah.
Anybody that came in would have to go by
Yep.
our regulations.
Any cannabis establishment proposal would have to follow the
Any
cannabis
of-
regulations.
Even the packaging.
Yep, absolutely.
Just thinking of the jobs coming into the town also. And thinking of missing or not being able to have this available to our people in our town, to have jobs, missing out on it going someplace else. I guess that's my base, but that's on the table.
Carl?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
As I am an ex officio member, I'd just like to make a couple of comments, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think that you already know what I've already mentioned at the last meeting, how I lean towards this. I think it might be appropriate, though, to continue the moratorium at minimum 6 months. It would definitely give you an opportunity to see what the other towns may be doing, give you more input. That documentation that Mary Ann has, that obviously is, 5 to 6 inches thick? It's probably just the beginning. And so there's lots of opportunities to take a look at what that has to say about different areas that you mentioned. There are different things you could do, growing, sales, whatever it might be. The issue of is the towns beside us or anywhere in the state of Connecticut, what are they doing, is important. It really doesn't matter if it's next door to us or anywhere else. It's what they are doing. So
Yeah.
it's a good idea to give an opportunity to read through that, of what they're doing. And losing out on an opportunity isn't going to happen because it's just starting. There's many companies that are coming forward that will say, here's what we'd like to do and propose if you choose to do so, go forward. So I don't think there's a problem with going forward for another 6 months for a moratorium. It gives you plenty of time to do the right thing.
So you're saying that they will contact you to want to come into Plainfield, and then you will present them to us?
If they do so, choose to come forward, they would come forward through economic development, they go through zoning, They would ask the questions specifically to the item, what they want to do, whether it's growing, manufacturing, retail, whatever it might be. They would definitely contact. We were in contact before with somebody who wanted to do something. They just didn't know what the issues were at the time. We haven't even gotten to that point because it hasn't been passed. At that point, it wasn't passed by the state of Connecticut. They were just reaching out before. So there are opportunities that are there, whether it's large grow, whether it's small, whether it's indoor grow, outdoor grow, it doesn't matter. I will share that story again from last meeting. My original hometown of Massachusetts was one of the first two in the state of Massachusetts for sales. Okay, so Leicester, Massachusetts had the sales. The novelty wore off after 6 months, but by that time the damage was done as far as the police force. They had to pay a lot of money to cover and support that issue. I don't think it'll be the same thing here. I think that novelty wore off. And by the way, to go a few miles to the next town, I don't think personally is a big deal, but that's me. But yeah, there's things we can learn from what's happened in the past, but definitely another 6 months might give you an opportunity to look at this. I did a quick number count of the your very nice chart that you put together. You've got 25 towns that passed. You got about 21 in moratorium, maybe a little more. You got about 70 that are saying waiting to return back information to you. There's one comment I don't know if you saw on the second page. One comment which I think kind of sums it up. It was from Hampton. No action taken. Sitting back to see what happens. So this is what the state of Connecticut is doing. It's brand new. We're learning, and I think it doesn't hurt whatsoever to go through another 6 month moratorium. That's a lot of information to digest.
Yes.
Every single one of those delivery service, hybrids, dispensaries, retailers, product management, production manufacturer, all of those, cultivator, all those have their own layer of information for you to go in detail and review, because one town may be different from another. And I think that 6 months gives us an opportunity to put that package together for a better, a clearer way to do this. They're not going away. It just started up, and you have time to review it. I think doing the right thing by giving another 6 months would be helpful.
Did you say that if we could put a moratorium on for 3 months and not go up 6?
You can put a moratorium on for however long you want to put a moratorium on, but keep in mind you need a public hearing to enact the moratorium and to remove the moratorium, so that time frame has to be considered as well.
Correct. And I would just say, the Planning and Zoning Commission is not an economic development commission. Our purpose is not to be the generator of businesses in town. Our purpose is to balance the uses of business versus residential, to preserve quality of life, to ensure safety, to ensure that the town is being used in a manner that fits our plan of conservation and development. But it's not to be an economic generator. So I just don't want any commission members to think that whether or not we generate business or jobs or taxes, that should be a factor in our decision-making process, because it really should not.
To that point, I appreciate that. But to that point, it's also true to what I said in the previous meeting, the impact to the police force. What do they have to do, and how do they deal with it? What is the impact to the Board of Education and the students that are actually could be utilizing that material? So there's a lot of factors in here, but again, you are land use, and I appreciate your time, and I would have actually liked a year, but I think a fair middle of the road would have been 6 months.
Well, 6 months is a year. We just
Another
went
year.
on 6 months and then we're going to
A year from
Right,
before.
but like I said at the beginning, when I brought up the idea of extending the moratorium, there's a lot of data to be collected, absorbed, reviewed, discussed. I would think a year would be a more reasonable data collection period of time, given the newness, because when we talk about, well, the state of Connecticut passed it 2 years ago. Right, but towns haven't had the opportunity to regulate, and then when you regulate, you still have to have people apply. And then when people apply, as we know, they don't break ground on day one. You know, there's a process where they break ground. So when we're looking at, you know, the comment I kept hearing in our previous meetings was, well, where is it happening now in Connecticut? And the fact is, I don't believe there's a single one open right now, because they're all in various phases.
There are open establishments now.
There's
Which
7.
opened how long ago?
There's 7.
Today. Today.
Okay, so
Five hours.
today, if it opened today, then you see just one day of traffic impact, one day of, safety issues, driving while impaired. State of Connecticut Police put out
They
a,
were in Monmouth, they had something set up.
yeah, so State of Connecticut Police actually put out a public service announcement that said driving high is still DUI. So, the fact that they're just opening now, you have no data collection or points to see the impact on traffic, the impact on those neighborhoods. So what we have to decide is, number one, do we want to extend the moratorium? If so, then we would need to get that on a regular meeting agenda so that we can have the proper public hearing and do that. So I would entertain a motion to direct staff to put that on our agenda for the February meeting so that we can have the proper public hearing to extend our moratorium. Part two of that would be, how long do we want that moratorium to be? Now, I would be in favor of a year period, because I feel like that would give all these other towns opportunity to do their regulations or prohibitions, apply those regulations or prohibitions, and then see the impact of those in actual reality, rather than theory, because when you create a regulation, it's one thing, but when you actually have an applicant who puts it in motion, a totally different scenario. So I would be in favor of the 1 year. Now, once again, we have to have a public hearing on this. So at the public hearing, if we propose 1 year, we could then determine that we want to cut it to a 6-month period.
Absolutely.
Or vice versa, if we came forward with a 6-month, we could propose it to be a year instead.
Yeah, but that would need another public hearing.
Exactly. So, from committee members, that's the question I put forward to you, how you want to proceed.
Well, I'm thinking that it's a lot easier to put a moratorium on liquor than it is to come with a set of regulations that are, I'll say, good and change.
Sure.
It'd be nice to get it, as close to right the first time. I agree, I think we need to.
At this point,
We need something, we need examples.
Sure. And if we put the moratorium for a year and it comes that we don't need that full year, we can shorten it.
Absolutely.
at this point, we really need the moratorium because we don't have any regulations ready to go.
We don't want to lapse.
Yeah, the earliest we can get regulations approved is April, and that's when the moratorium expires. So
Sure.
we really have to extend it.
Yeah, we're at a point where now we have to, it's only been 2 years, and we still have to go out more years. Are we going to have meetings of half an hour? Are we going to go out and say, okay, we haven't had time to decide again? We need to get on this, folks. We need to get our heads together.
So
don't
we've
even- I'm
continued
sorry.
because members have, sorry.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Rod. No, go ahead.
We haven't even decided what direction we want to go in. To me, the first thing to do is to find a direction. Do you want to grow? Do you want to package? Do you want to, or do you want to do all three? Which, I'm sorry, but I just don't see that in our future.
Sure.
But a half an hour meeting, don't cut it, guys. Not one. If we're going to do that for the next 6 months, I'm not sure I want to do that for the next.
Okay, so I will say, the members of this subcommittee wanted additional information, which is why our meeting's been continued. So no decisions have been made because members requested additional information to make a decision. And the meeting time was shortened by the request of members. So, members can increase the allotment of time of the meetings. Members can certainly make known what direction they want to go, and we can certainly go in that direction. But the feeling that I'm getting is that there's not enough information at this time to move forward in a direction. So I would like to direct staff to extend the moratorium for 1 year, during which time we would have the additional information for review. So what would members like to do?
Clarification, you place staff to put it on the agenda.
Yes, correct, because we have to go through a public hearing for that. So it would be on the agenda in February, so that we could set the public hearing in March, so that we could extend prior to the expiration April 1st.
So I am in agreement. I'd be willing to make a motion to that.
Okay. So I have a motion by John to direct staff.
I'll second that.
I have a second by June. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
One opposition. So motion passes 3-1. So Ryan, if you could get that on our agenda for the next. All right. So we also need to review and act on the subcommittee minutes from December 13th. Were there any adjustments, changes to the minutes that were provided? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make that motion to accept the minutes.
Second. I have a motion by June and a second by Roz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, one abstention. All right, for other, did the subcommittee want to meet next month, change the time to 6, or do you want to suspend meetings for a period of time to collect more information and then perhaps have a meeting on a different night where there'd be no time limit?
Meeting is different. I can't do this.
Okay, all right, so I would entertain a motion to suspend the monthly subcommittee meetings. And after 3 months of data collection, we'll schedule a special meeting, workshop on a date other than our regular meeting night. Would anyone make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have the motion by June,
I'll second.
second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we will reconvene that. So seeing no other item, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by June,
I'll second.
second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, subcommittee is adjourned, and we've got about 4 minutes before regular meeting. Welcome, everybody, to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Tuesday, January 10th. I will call the meeting to order and start with roll call on the left.
June Gagnon.
Karla Desjardins.
Ross Shivett.
Mary Ann Gennatti?
All right, we do have a quorum, and there are no alternates to appoint. Moving on to public hearings, item A, 22-8ZC of 55 East Main Street, LLC, care of William R. Sweeney Esquire, requesting a text amendment to section 7.21.1, 7.22.1, 7.23.1, 7.24.1, 8.21, and adding new section 12.47 for the purpose of allowing for multi-family housing. The applicant would like to step up.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Commission. Again, for the record, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London, Connecticut. We had a public hearing on this matter. We opened the public hearing at your last meeting before the holidays. Went through the text amendment that's before you tonight. Out of that meeting, the chairwoman and the other commissioners asked us for 2 additional bits of information. One was to propose an amendment or a revision to the amendment that's before you. And I have made those changes. I don't know, did you get a copy of my changes in your package? If not, I have handouts. Okay. So in the revised version of the regulation, the only change that was made, and this, again, this says revised December of 2022 at the top left-hand corner, but in subsection E of the new and proposed section 12.47, we made some changes to the height requirements for multifamily. Specifically, the Commission had expressed some concern about the height of structures, particularly ones that might have structured parking built into them. We removed that altogether. And so the new section reads as follows. It says, notwithstanding the maximum height provisions of the underlying zoning district, no building shall exceed 3 stories or, and this is new, 40 feet in height. It goes on, we added an additional provision that modifies this section. This maximum height may be increased in excess of 40 feet, provided that the required building setback provided in section 12.47H below is likewise increased on a 1-to-1 basis up to a maximum height of no greater than 50 feet. So we have a setback requirement for multifamily under this section of 50 feet from all property lines. If someone had a building that wanted to be taller than 40 feet, you're still limited to 3 stories. But if you wanted to have a building that was taller than 40 feet because of architectural features, maybe a peaked roof or some other type of roof design, you could go higher than 40 feet up to a maximum of 50 feet, but you would have to back the building off additionally from the setbacks. So those 50-foot setbacks would be backed off to 60-foot setbacks, for example, if you went up for the full 50 feet allowance. And I think that was the first item that the commission asked us to look at. We think that that's reasonable and allows us to still do quality multifamily development in town, particularly encouraging higher architectural design in projects and roof lines that are more New England in nature. The second item that the commission asked us to look at was to give the commission some idea of the locations in town that this regulation might be able to impact. And as I said before, that is a somewhat difficult effort because there's always the opportunity for people to combine parcels and merge parcels. But I got together with your zoning officer, Mr. Brace, between the last meeting and this meeting, and we collectively together went through the zoning maps, went through the GIS system, went through the sewer shed map for the town, and basically using the eligibility standards that are in section 12-47, we identified 8 different locations that potentially could support a multifamily development underneath, under this new section. And did you get a copy of Mr. Brace's map in your section too? I would say a couple things just to talk briefly about the map. There are 8 potential sites listed. Again, there could be other sites as well because disparate property owners may be able to combine sites. You might have people assemble or amalgamate properties, but we try to give just an idea of sort of where you might see these. So a couple comments on a few of these. Number 1 is up in the village of Warbegan. That is actually would be an amalgamation of commonly owned properties. I think the Corsons own some lots up in that area. So that's not a single lot, it's multiple lots, but that would be an amalgamation or a combination of those properties. Number 2 is out on Black Hill Road. I think it's important to note that that property does not have public water. So there would need to be a community well system for any multifamily out there. Based on changes that went through the state legislature on community well systems recently, that's going to be a very difficult project to do, particularly for any type of density on the site. I'd also note that that's next to your one of the your sewage treatment plant as well. So it would not be probably a very highly prized location for multifamily because of its location, but it is on the map because it meets sort of the general eligibility requirements. Some of the other properties in town include some land out on East Main Street. There's some, I think the old Cayman Aerospace site is on on this as well. There is some land down on 14A, although that's number 5 on your map. I would say that after we made this map, I took a little closer look at that. That's a fairly wet property. So there's some pretty significant wetland challenges on that. And then we've got 3 potential sites sort of in your Route 12 corridor. That's areas 6, 7, and potentially 8 as well. I would just say that 6 is actually maybe a little misleading. That's what's shown on the thing on the map is actually an amalgamation of disparately owned properties. It's not under common ownership. And some of those properties, by themselves do not qualify because they don't have the minimum lot size. So that's probably a little bit tougher, at least at that size. So again, we wanted to give you a sense of sort of where this could take place. Again, I would remind the commission that the requirements of section 1247, and notably I would point out the key eligibility requirements, a minimum lot size of 10 acres, the frontage and primary access to a state highway, the need to have municipal sewers and an adequate water supply. Those things, those three alone, basically carve out a lot of the potential opportunities in town. And so we really are looking at areas, and I think this is the key point, is where there is infrastructure in place to support a higher intensity of development. So with that, I hope that we've been responsive to your requests. As I said before, we strongly believe that this regulation change will position Plainfield to be able to provide opportunities for new housing, housing that is sustainably priced, and housing that's meeting the changing demographic trends here in Eastern Connecticut. It is also, I think, is in your role as the Planning Commission, it's critical in your plan of conservation development to try to create additional opportunities to add new housing units in town and also diversify the types of units, of dwelling units that are available. So we think this regulation does that as well. With that, I take any additional questions you might have.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. So if there's anybody in the audience with a comment or question on this application, this is your opportunity. So you can step up.
Mark Gaggy, Jackson Road. Had a question about the sewer. If it's not on a direct sewer line, would the developer be responsible for the sewer line to it, for the maintenance of that sewer line, pump station if it's needed, whatever? That's one question. And I don't know about new community wells, but every community well I've ever seen, High Street, down Montville, I know one, they always fail in time. So I agree, it's best on a city water line. And I was doing some calculations on our affordable housing plan. And last month, he's spoken about you could put up to 200 units on a 10-acre lot. If we added 200 units of market value rentals to our housing stock, we would probably dip below our 10% affordable housing. So I'll ask again, request that we add some type of percentage of affordable housing into these multifamily housing units to keep up with our affordable housing stock. And then the other thing I had to say was about RA60 zones. People that move into RA60 zones, I know that lot size has changed, it's grown, it's gotten bigger. People move to those zones because they want privacy. And I just think that's a bad idea to put those in RA60, strictly RA60 zone. And I do like the idea of putting them on the Route 12, 395 parallel. I think that's a good fit for that.
Thank you. Ryan, in regards to sewer, if there was a property that did not currently have sewer, the town would do an evaluation first to see if they would be able to bring sewer to that property. Is that right?
Well, yeah.
Or
So
capacity?
the way it typically works is the developer will propose an extension to the sewer line, to the sewer main. They would be responsible for all costs associated with it. The town would take over the line within the road or possibly an easement over a property.
Yeah.
Typically, once it hits private property, it's under the ownership of the developer.
Thank you. I think that answered your question. All right. And your comment, state your name for the record.
Hi, Ernest Gallo. I'm for this new regulation. I think that all the towns started 20, 25 years ago with the impact of schools and these homes and apartments. And if you look at this statistic today, it's not even 1% of people having children. Everybody's only having one kid, two kids maybe. I've been doing this study with our new project coming to town, and the people that are renting are all single or older people. It's not the people that having the babies. And right now, the colleges they're not filling their programs, and the high school today is under kids. There's no kids coming forward, so I don't think there's a big impact on our schools anymore. And they're saying for the future it's even going to get worse. So just, we started 25 years ago, all the towns did it because of that reason. And I think it's so needed for apartments. It's about rooftops, and a town for economics need people. People thrive, it makes the towns, helps our mom and pops out, businesses out. It's about getting people here that can't afford houses, and I just think it's really needed, so I'm for it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public?
Hello, my name is John Brisson. I own some property in Woods Up. I know this was pretty much about properties on state roads, is that correct?
Yes, the regulation limited it.
So what happens if you have a big chunk of property that has sewer on it? Would that be able to be brought into the same?
It would have to have road frontage access via state road.
Correct, for this regulation.
Yeah, per this
No
regulation.
exceptions whatsoever?
Not with these regulations as presented.
Okay.
Doesn't prohibit the commission from determining that there would be a need to modify the regulation to meet a need or demand, but these regulations as presented have that rule. So if someone wanted to come forward with a proposal that didn't meet the regulations, they wouldn't be able to apply. Any other comments or questions from the public?
Just quickly, a couple responses. Thank you, Mr. Brace. Obviously, any sewer extension would be at the cost of the applicant or developer. The community water systems are extremely difficult to do now in the state of Connecticut because of a lot of the problems that they've had, and so that's why I think that one site that's on the map, while it's eligible, is probably not viable. In terms of affordability, we did not write this plan with an affordable component specifically because we felt there is a need for market rate multifamily housing here in Plainfield. I want to make clear, though, that there is nothing in our plan that would prevent a developer from proposing an affordable component to a project, and there is nothing that would prevent the town from requesting a developer to consider that as well. I do want to make a case that RA 60 is extremely important to keep in this regulation. RA 60 covers a very large area of this town. RA 60 is also includes several of the sites, of the only the handful of sites that are actually been shown on Mr. Brace's map. We have put the necessary controls in place to avoid any conflicts as suggested by the speaker. Namely, it has to be on state road. It can't be out on, in a rural area. It has to be on state road. And this is still under special permit. It's still a special permit use. It's not a site plan. There's no automatic entitlement to the permit. You get to make that weigh the impact of the project on the surrounding neighborhood in the criteria that's set forth in your regulations. So we think that there are reasonable protections in place. Just to comment on the comments of the second speaker, I couldn't agree more. As I said in my initial remarks at the last meeting, while impact of school-age children is not something the zoning commission can consider, it's important to note that multifamily does not generate children in your school system. It's just a percentage of what is generated by single-family housing. And being on the Board of Ed in my town, I know that, and those, I'm sure those of you who may know Board of Ed members here in Plainfield, our school populations are decreasing all across eastern Connecticut. There are empty seats in every classroom in every grade. What that really is unused infrastructure that you've already paid for. The people of Plainfield have already paid for. You paid for the schools, you paid for those seats, and if there's not kids in there, you're actually wasting the investment of prior taxpayers. So we want to repopulate eastern Connecticut. We want people to live here. You have these businesses that are moving into the community. I know I talked with your first selectman in great detail about that. You want people to work here and actually go home here so that they spend their disposable income at the businesses in this town. If you don't build the housing, they will go elsewhere, and those towns will get all the benefit of all those new workers. So it's critically important that you pass this regulation tonight. I'd ask you to close the public hearing and hopefully take action this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a question. Art brought up the subject of one car for a studio, right? Now, I forgot what you said. What did you say that could be done for that?
this text amendment allows for the phasing of parking so that they wouldn't have to build all the parking straight off. But if all the parking was filled, they required more, then they could move on to phase 2 and construct the additional parking.
Is that what triggers phase 2?
So parking has to be provided on plans at a rate of 1 space per studio or 1 bedroom unit and 2 spaces per 2 bedroom or more unit. What we can propose to the commission during the special permit process that we don't build all of that parking at once. Quite frankly, our experience, the parking ratio that works in modern multifamily is somewhere in the range of 1.2 to 1.3 spaces per unit. That's just what people who live in apartments have cars. There's really good longitudinal studies of that over the last 20 years. So what we suggested is we will, from a zoning perspective, we'll show a plan with that calculation, and the developer can come forward and say, listen, we think we only need X to actually function, and we'd like to put some of the parking aside. It's approved, it'll have to be bonded as well, and if it works, then that never has to be built, and then you never have that additional impervious surface, you never have to worry about that additional stormwater, but the commission can basically direct the developer to build it at any time in the future if it actually determined that they need the parking to function.
So that would trigger getting more parking.
Yeah, so the commission would retain the power to basically call the bond and say, listen, your calculation says that you needed 200 spaces, you built 150 spaces, we're seeing parking problems out there, build the other 50. And so it was just sort of a creative way to be a little bit more flexible with parking, but to also give some protections in case people were concerned about adopting a little bit more modern of a parking calculation.
Any other questions from board or staff? And I would just remind the board, with the closing of the public hearing, we would move it for deliberation. And during deliberation, you can choose to approve in part or in whole, but you can't make substantive changes to the text. So am I correct in this? If you wanted to make changes to the text, we'd have to reopen the public hearing.
So you could take and tighten the regulations up if you want to, but not loosen.
I would echo Mr. Brace's comments. The law is very clear that you can make changes, you can modify what is before you, provided the modifications are more restrictive in nature.
For the clarification and confirmation.
For the record, Captain Cunningham, I am in favor of the text amendment change.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions on this application? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Roz to close the public hearing. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. Moving on to item B, 22-9ZC of Planning and Zoning Commission requesting a general update to the zoning regulations, add EV charging stations, eliminate floor area requirements for homes, add hospitals to commercial zones, modify earth excavation monitoring well specs, modify abandonment of non-conforming uses in compliance with current case law. We had continued this from last month for one item for review. Ryan and John, do you want to review what that modification change was?
Well, that was the monitor.
Yes, you're supposed to go through that and see what you want to do with mine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that you don't need, a filter pack on a well that's specifically intended to monitor water well. I think it should still have a slotted screen to make sure that it's got enough porous surface on it to let the water come and go. And I'm a bit concerned about not having a locking cap on the well. I haven't seen this very often, but sometimes they get vandalized. Who can dump stuff down, and that results in a big problem. But that would, not having a filter pack, would cut a lot of the time involved in putting the well in. but you want to make sure it's a decent well that's going to get good flow in and out, and you don't want it to end up becoming a liability. Because that, honestly, that liability would be on the owner of the property. So in effect, it's protected now. Doesn't happen very often, but if it does, it can be protected.
So,
What's the proposal for the modification of the language?
Okay, you eliminate the filter pack, and, but keep the lock. So really, that's the only modification I had was to eliminate the filter pack at that back lock.
do they make PVC locking caps?
Please?
Do they make PVC locking caps?
Not really, usually they use either a row box, which is fairly inexpensive, but they have stand-up steel pipes that you put down there and cap on those. PVC, you know, you put it out there in the sun for a couple of years, it's going to disintegrate anyway.
Typically, you don't have wells in the ground for more than 6 months at a time or so to get them readings.
True. But, you know, you can use a row box, $30.
What is that?
It's like a row box. Yeah, it's a row box. It's just a round plate. It's got looks like a can with a lid on it. It sets down, and it's usually set in concrete, so you can, pull it out, and it's got bolts on it. And inside that, they have a gripper plug, and you can put a lock on those. They're pretty inexpensive.
How do you spell that?
Little box.
ROAD?
Yep.
For a curve,
Or a curved box.
This is a public hearing, so if you have a comment or question you'd like to address to the commission, please step up to the microphone and make your comment or question, or further information.
I can send you some pictures that help clarify. That's what they're called, and that's what they do. We put them in all the time.
If you want to keep the hearing open, so I can make some adjustments.
Well, would it be better, since there were no comments, questions, etc. on the rest of the text, would it be more prudent to remove this section from this application so that we can proceed with the other language that I think is important to get on the books sooner rather than later?
I'd rather not have to do a whole new application just because of cost. I don't think it's going to hurt to leave this on open for a moment.
So, board members' point for consideration. Mr.
Kevin Cunningham, I do have a question, if you wouldn't mind, on section 711, minimum floor area. True or not, or maybe you can clarify for me. It says the minimum allowable floor space shall not be less than what is required by the state building code and Department of Health. Does that factor in for tiny homes?
Yes, so it would allow for tiny homes, but our regulations do not allow for anything on a trailer. So if somebody wanted to build a tiny home, they could, but it would have to be on a foundation.
I know it's not your board to review this, but I have concern over the inspection of such tiny homes.
Well, they would have to meet the building. So somebody would come in for an application to build a new house. It might only be 200 square feet, but it has to meet all the requirements of the building code. It has to be on the foundation.
And again, it's not directly related to your board, but we have a problem. The problem is we have a company that does that. They build them and they ship them out. We don't have a chance to inspect. So how do we know that this is actually going to follow?
We wouldn't anyway. What they build on their property, we have no control because they're not permits to do it. It's not being set on the property in our town. So they build a tiny home over there.
Understanding, okay,
No,
I'll clarify this.
So it's a prefab. Essentially, there are companies that create a home, and then they transport it, and then they put it on the property, and it's a home. So what Ryan's saying is in order for them to take that home and put it on the property, it would have to have a foundation. It would go through the normal building permit process. And it would be inspected at time of installation, I guess you would call it.
To wherever it goes. The unfortunate part about that, it never does. And so if this is being built here, it moves out to another town, like let's say Hartford, they don't inspect them, and I'm worried about the safety. That's my concern.
but it would fall under the jurisdiction of the city of Hartford if it was,
Yeah, we don't know where they're sending them to.
States, right?
right, I would say wherever it is becoming a home, it would fall under the regulations of that jurisdiction.
Well, let's use Plainfield. So now it's
Sure.
located in Plainfield. We don't know where they sent it to. No one's going to report that they have.
So essentially, it's an illegal use if they don't go through the building permit
But
process.
that's nothing to do with us, right?
But that's what
Yeah.
I was saying. But I was concerned that this is actually
Well, it could be a
right
zoning
to it.
violation. It depends what they do, whether it's a zoning enforcement issue.
If they put a structure on our property without permits, yes. it is.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also a building issue, and it could be a Department of Health issue, and
Yes.
many, many different issues.
Isn't that all addressed with our regulations?
So it's if a violation is found. So someone can illegally put stuff on their property, and once it's found out, then they have to pay fines, go through the process, et cetera.
So just to clarify, we were over this last month, the minimum gross floor areas that we have are not legal. So we can no longer keep these in place. If we try to enforce them, somebody can take it to court and it would be overturned.
Sure. Yep. So essentially what we're doing is defaulting to the state law, state building code, state Department of Health, in the same way that we default to state statutes on things that are not spoken to in regulations.
And we cannot write regulations to bypass their state.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just bringing it up as a concern.
Okay. All right. Understood.
Yeah, we'd be able to head off that problem if somebody were to build a legal tiny home. We would take over and building inspector would inspect.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments from the public on this application? Any comments or questions from staff or board members? So we have the unresolved issue of the language for the processing and removal. Ryan has suggested that we continue this public hearing to next month to address that. Were we to close, we could strike and proceed.
Actually, I think we may be able to do this a little more.
Okay.
First of all, it said the well shall have a locking steel protective cover. It doesn't say what kind, so that would be left up to the person who has the well. They could elect to go with the roadblocks. And so if we were to just eliminate the second and third sentence of the struck out area, that would eliminate the need for the filter pack and the bentonite filter pack seal.
Could you just, for the record, read the sentences that you want to strike, just so we can have updated language?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. The well screen shall be surrounded by a sand filter pack that extends to at least 2 feet above the top of the well screen. The filter pack shall be sealed with a bentonite filter pack seal that extends at least 2 feet above the top of the filter pack.
You want to eliminate that?
To eliminate that, keep everything else.
So we're keeping the screen intervals shall intersect with the groundwater table, and from there on out, correct?
We're keeping that. Wait a minute, where are you? Right.
The sentence after you struck. So after you struck through filter pack, he's asking about the next sentence.
That sticks.
All right, that's easy enough to do.
Any other comments from public? Any other comments, questions from board members or staff? All right, so that was the change, so no need for further review. Ryan, would you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion on the public hearing.
Motion to close.
I have a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item C, 22-8 SP of Ron Tatro requesting special permit, and I believe we had a request to continue without opening. Is that right, Ryan?
Yes, he failed to notify the abutters.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to, what would the correct phrasing be? Because we're not continuing because we didn't open it.
Table the open until February.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to table to the February 14th, so we are not opening a public hearing.
So
I have a motion by John and a second by Roz. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will see that one in February. Moving on to the regular meeting, I will call the meeting to order. And we have additions and corrections to the agenda. So we have the following items to add under new business. Item A, 22-9 SPL of Keith Passe requesting a site plan review. Item B, 22-9 SP of Michael Jordan requesting a special permit. Item C, 23-2 SP of Strategic Commercial Realty Group LLC requesting reapproval of earth excavation permit. Item D, 23-3 SP of Town of Plainfield requesting a special permit. So I'll entertain a motion to add those items under new business.
I'll make that motion to add those items in new business.
I have a motion by June. Second by Roz. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, items A, B, C, and D have been added to new business. Any citizen participation? This would be a comment to the commission not related to the public hearings. Thank you. Moving on to unfinished old business. Item A, 22-AZC of 55 Main Street LLC, care of William R. Sweeney Esquire, requesting text amendment to sections, already repeated, you don't have to say them again, for the purpose of allowing for multifamily housing. So items for discussion among board members. So in our conversation, we talked about this application is for all zones, residential, industrial, and commercial.
Residential and commercial.
There was no industrial? Okay, my mistake, I apologize. So all residential and commercial. With that, it would change density in areas. RA60 is a zone that has been less dense than the other development areas. So I would ask the board to consider striking RA60 from the regulations so it would not be included. If you remember, we had lengthy public hearings on the accessory dwelling units, and the public feedback and input was that they didn't want the RA60 zone to turn into multifamily housing. So just an item of consideration and discussion for board members who'd like to review. Other than that, I feel it is a needed. I very much appreciate the amount of effort that the applicant went into to alleviate some of the concerns about the heights, because as we discussed at the last meeting, some of those heights could have gone significantly higher than other buildings in the zone. So I very much appreciate the new language that addresses the height maximums. So are there any other items for discussion that members would like to review before I entertain a motion on the application? And please note, because it is a text amendment, it does require, I'll be right with you, an effective date in the motion. Yes, Marian.
Just to clarify, though the current draft doesn't include a requirement for an affordable housing component, the commission could modify the proposal to include that, because if a developer subsequently, if they're adopted as is, and a developer comes in with a special permit application and does not propose an affordable housing component, if the commission asks him to and he declines, he can't be required to.
Understood. So that would be at time of application, affordable housing could not be required of the applicant
Unless it's
in the language.
If the commission wants to go that route, the language we want to modify to say that the commission
May,
may impose a requirement for affordable housing. That would include up to a percentage.
up to, so that way the commission could have a smaller threshold, they wouldn't have to go to them.
You want to say maybe 10% of the units?
That's pretty standard.
Because that's the threshold, right? The state of
Well,
Connecticut.
that's the state's threshold for developers not to, for the town not to be required to accept an 830G application. But generally, housing developments that do propose affordable housing components, they usually propose 10% of them to be affordable.
So that would be in addition in 12.47, in the paragraph of 12.47.
Yes. So you could add,
So that would be item K, or would it fall within a previously identified section?
give me a second, I'll redo it.
Sure.
I would say add section K, if that's what we want to do.
And what would the proposed language for that be? Could you just repeat that for the record?
Let me write it out just so I,
Sure.
how about the commission may require affordable housing units up to 10% of the proposed units.
Sounds good to me. Board members have any input or staff on that language?
Maybe just 10%, the commission may require up to 10% of the proposed units to be affordable housing.
Sounds good.
Oh, that sounds good. All right. So any other items for discussion among board members? Did
I
any-
disagree with RA 60, and I feel that if we just allow hundreds of apartment units to be placed in those neighborhoods, it's going to change the rural character of Plainfield. It's going to change the entire face of the town. So I think we need to limit where multiple units can be placed and find a number, because we had asked how many would be allowed on 10 acres, and it was up to 200. That's a lot of apartments suddenly put in one spot in the town. Now, I'm looking at these different spots here, and I had another question about the industrial. Command property would be a great place to put some apartments, but we have to look at it because it says industrial.
Well, so,
It would have to be rezoned.
yeah, and when I was looking at properties that could use this project, could use these regulations, didn't matter what the zoning was because it can be rezoned.
Right.
So we have the physical property,
Yeah.
not the zoning.
So just to kind of summarize, June, so you would be in favor of striking RA 60 from this
Yes.
text change? Okay. All right. And then just to clarify, when an application comes before us, they would have the proposed number of units at that time. So depending on location, traffic, parking, et cetera, we as the commission could determine a lower amount of apartments at that time.
Absolutely.
Okay, because that's part of the special permit process. So I don't feel it's necessary to put that in the regulations because that will be part of the special permit process. And I feel we do have the authority at that time to make those kinds of adjustments. Public hearings closed, this is now deliberation. Yep. So any other items for board discussion or input from staff on deliberations? Okay. So looking at the discussion thus far, there is 3 items to consider when making your motion. Adding item K, which would be addressing the affordable housing, may require. Striking RA60 from the language, and then setting an effective date of February 1st. Did I miss any items that were discussed? Okay. So hearing no other discussion among board members, I would entertain a motion with consideration of those three items.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion from June to approve the application with the addition of item K, to strike RA60 from the regulation, and to have an effective date of February 1st. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Roz. All in favor of approving that motion? Aye. Any opposed? And no abstentions. So the application is approved with those changes. And effective date of February 1st. Okay. Moving on to item B, 22-9ZC of the Planning and Zoning Commission, requesting general update to zoning regulations. We closed the public hearing on that. We modified the language. And are there any items for board member consideration or deliberation? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on the application, and please include the effective date of February 1st in your motion.
Make a motion that we approve the changes as amended at this meeting with a effective date.
I'll second
I
that.
have a motion by John and a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Application is approved with an effective date of February 1st. Item C has been tabled to February. I'll entertain a motion to continue the old business to February.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June to continue item C.
Second.
Second by Roz. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to our new business. Item A, 22-9SPL of Keith Passe, requesting site plan review for a 36 by 50 attached garage with a 14 by 37 lean-to, a commercial building located at 28 Sterling Road, Assessor's Map 30, Block 61, Lot 18, C2 zoning district.
They have not completed the hearings, so they would like to continue until next month.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to continue.
So moved.
Motion by Roz.
Second.
Second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Continued to next month's meeting. Item B, 22-9SP of Michael Jordan, requesting a special permit for converting an attached garage into an ADU on property located at 133 Harris Road, Assessor's Map 36, Block 116, Lot 12, RA60 zone. So that does require a special permit and a public hearing. So I'll entertain a motion to schedule the public hearing.
I'll make that motion to schedule.
Motion by June to schedule a public hearing.
For what day?
The regular meeting, February 14th. I have a motion by June and a second by John. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Scheduled for public hearing in February. Item C, 23-2SP of Strategic Commercial Realty Group LLC, care of David Held, requesting reapproval of earth excavation permit on property located at 0 Jackson Road, Assessor's Map 7, Block 53A, Lot 41, RA60 zoning district. And do we have the applicant here this evening?
No. Okay. So no, they would just like to schedule a public hearing.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June,
No second.
second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is scheduled for February meeting. Item D, 23-3SP of Town of Plainfield, requesting a special permit for improvements to Lions Park on property located at 0 Reservoir Street, Assessor's Map 2P, Block 30A, Lot 1, Industrial 1 zoning district.
Public hearing.
Yep, public hearing for this as well.
I'll make a motion to send a public hearing.
I have a motion by Roz to schedule a public hearing at our next regular meeting. I have a second by June. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Scheduled public hearing. New business. Moving to review and act on the minutes of the December 13th meeting. Are there any additions, changes, modifications?
I have one change. It was actually John who made the motion for the slate. And I said,
Okay. And what page was that on?
last page 4.
Okay, so page 4.
It says Roz made a motion and seconded by June. It's actually John. Because I listened to the video.
Oh, okay. And then, all right.
I made the nomination at first, and then was seconded.
Okay.
By Roz, and then that got mixed up, and then John made the motion for the slate. And I
Okay.
seconded.
So if we can just
That's
modify.
the change I saw.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion to approve with that modification.
I'll make that motion to approve the modification.
Motion has been made.
Second.
Second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to report from zoning enforcement. Oh, I'm sorry, correspondence.
I have nothing. I did have emailed the land use law workshop that's coming up in March, and if members would like to be signed up for that, let me know and I can register them.
How about our training?
Pardon me?
How about our training?
Well, the FOIA workshop last week would have qualified for 1 hour of the training.
The
And
what?
this would qualify as well.
And that does as well, yes. The upcoming land use law seminar qualifies. Other trainings, we're working to coordinate with the presenting agencies, and we'll notify when they're ready. So if anybody wants to go, wants to attend, it's going to be a virtual meeting.
Yeah, please sign me up.
Okay.
Thank you.
What is it?
It's a Zoom meeting.
I know.
March 11th.
Saturday, March
Oh,
11th.
okay.
It's all day.
9 a.m.
Yeah, it's 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. via Zoom. Yep.
Did you want to be signed up, Ross?
Yes, please. I want to get my hour in.
Yes. Agreed.
I already have an hour, by the way.
For what?
A little bit. Ryan, you was it?
We went to Alcatraz for that meeting.
Was that?
That was back in December.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Why? I got a
Because
certificate.
it was after, it was before January 1st.
Okay. No, you have to get it all in one calendar year or something?
By
Training?
2024.
Because it's continuing education.
Yeah.
All right. So staff will continue to let us know about eligible trainings so we can meet that requirement.
Oh, excuse me, what is that requirement? How many hours?
It varies depending on what type of training. Minimum 1 hour for affordable and fair housing practices, process and procedures section like planning and running a meeting, commissioner conduct, FOIA, etc., which is, FOIA was presented last week. That's 1 to 1.5 hours. Site plan surveying, map reading, basics of reading a site plan, that's 1.5 hours or an hour. And then the environmental, agricultural, and historic, that's 1 to 1.5 hours.
So looking at the agenda of this training, that would meet how many of the requirements?
I have not tallied.
Could you?
I will tally.
Yes, and just send an email out to board members so then if they know how many hours each training will
Yep,
complete,
absolutely.
that'll be better informed whether they want to attend or not.
Absolutely.
And when is the Connecticut Bar one? Wait.
This is
Saturday, March 11th, that's this one.
That's this one. Okay. All right, very good. Mr. Kennedy.
I might be able to assist. You mentioned, Mary Ann, you mentioned different types of workshops. They can be done online. We do have a new one for ethics. Is that, do you think that might qualify?
For us?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll send you the link
Right.
to share with your board.
Yep.
There's 3 workshops on ethics that were taken throughout the state of Connecticut, and you can use those.
Okay, great. And you can send that to staff, they'll distribute, and because staff will assist us in the tracking.
Sure.
So we want to make sure staff is included on all of those. All right. No other correspondence? All right, moving on to zoning enforcement report.
Okay. 14 Canterbury Road. They have made more progress over there. I'd say the site was probably about 3/4 of the way cleaned up, which is what they had there. That is pretty good.
It's good?
Yeah.
They're doing good.
They're doing pretty good. You could barely walk in the backyard. 3244 Norwich Road, Sawyer Sheds, we are still in court over that.
Has anything gone in front of the judges?
Yes, we have received some orders. We are actually going back before the judge on the 13 Simmons Ave, Driscoll. We are still in court over this. Well, actually, we were granted judgment to be able to enter the property to remove the violations, and I am working on getting those for that. The property owner did come in and say that he was going to be working quickly to remove the cars that, he wants to save the cars, so he's trying to get them removed. I don't know how much progress he's made yet. Carbox Road, nothing new on that. Wish the bank was moving, but at least the property is pretty much cleaned up. 256 Spalding Road, RVS dwelling. This is in court. 552 Squaw Rock Road for junkyard. This is also in court. Zero Community Ave extension, the mulch operation. They haven't really made any progress over there, but they are keeping the road clean. I don't think we'll see any progress over the winter. We'll probably have to continue the activities in the spring to bring it to compliance. 2426 South Chestnut for bulky waste, and that has been cleaned up, so that is now closed. 104 High Street for a junkyard, and this is a new one. They are going to be working to clean up the property, so they're going to be giving me a remediation plan. But there's a lot over there to clean up, so it's going to take a little while. 201 Pickett Road, complaint of sheds and setbacks, and also dump trucks on the property. So 2 dump trucks, one has been removed, 2 sheds, one that was placed on the property, one that is under construction. They have 30 days to come in for permits and relocate those sheds to the proper locations away from side property lines. And the dump truck has to be removed in 30 days. That's it.
Thank you. And report from Planning and Development?
I have nothing other than my written report. However, First Selectman Cunningham did let me know before the meeting started that he has found some additional information regarding the Dow Road Bridge. He's got potential funding sources.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. That's great news. All right. Anything for other? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that motion.
Motion by June to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Roz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank